welcome everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar today about the Dying Matters project in Leeds, and with a focus on bereavement. I seem to be having problems with my Skype. Can you all still hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
You can hear me. I don't keep dipping in and out. I keep losing everybody from my list, and then everybody keeps rejoining. So I don't know whether it's me or Skype. Anyway, I'll carry on regardless. And if you can't hear me, then you'll just have to let me know. So the purpose of the session today really is just to raise awareness in end-of-life issues, and also give you a little bit of background about the Dying Matters campaign. We're hoping that really after today you'll have a better understanding and knowledge of the national and local Dying Matters work. There'll be an opportunity to consider whether you might have a role to play in Dying Matters in the future, and also to think about the impact that COVID's had on things like grief and bereavement. Just a few housekeeping. We've put everybody on mute, but there is the chat function. So if you've got any questions, feel free to put your questions in the chat function as we're going along. There'll also be an opportunity at the end to raise any questions. And just a reminder that the session is being recorded. So that means that it will be available to view afterwards, and we can share it. And that'll be via the Public Health Resource Centre website. I'll start off by introducing myself, and also Jane, who's my co-presenter today. I'm Liz Messenger of Public Health. I lead the Older People's Programme and have been involved in the Dying Matters project since it started in Leeds. Jane, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Jane, and I manage Leeds Bereavement Forum, which is a charity based in Leeds that is all about bereavement.
Thank you. So I'm just going to start the presentation off with a little bit of background about Dying Matters, the national project, but also our local programme here in Leeds. The National Dying Matters Coalition was established quite a long time ago now, in 2009, and it was basically established to encourage communities to start to talk about death and dying. I think it's safe to say, even sort of 11, 12 years on, death and dying still continue to be seen as a taboo subject, and it is often not talked about within families, communities, and also with professionals. And I think from a lot of data that the National Dying Matters Coalition has gathered, the vast majority of the public believe that people in Britain are uncomfortable discussing death and dying. And sometimes people have this thought that if you talk about death and dying, you might actually lead it to happen. So it is a very taboo subject. But on the flip side of that, if we can encourage people to talk about dying and the fact that it is an inevitable part of life, that enables those conversations about end-of-life care and end-of-life planning to be easier. And it means that friends, families, communities are very aware of what people's wishes are at the end of life. So as I say, the national programme was established in 2009. It was brought about to encourage more people to talk about death and dying and to plan for the last years of life. There are 5 key messages within the campaign, and they focused on writing a will, recording funeral wishes, planning for future care and support, having a real focus on organ donation, and to tell loved ones about your wishes at end of life. So as I've mentioned, there is a lot of national data available, which kind of really drives the reason why the programme was established. Only 1 in 3 British adults say they've written a will. And at the time, only 33%, so again, a third of people were registered as an organ donor. And 1 in 4 talked to somebody about their funeral wishes. So there was a lot of scope there for both the national programme but also locally within Leeds for us to really focus on those key messages and try and get more people to have thought about writing a will, to have written a will, to talk to family and friends about funeral wishes, etc. And then also in 2003, we had a health needs assessment that was completed around end-of-life care for adults. And that really drove the development of our local Dying Matters public awareness campaign. And we've reviewed that since. We reviewed that in 2018, and we'd moved a long way in that time. But that health needs assessment review really focused on 2 particular groups that we've now developed more actions around, and they were 2 groups that were less likely to engage in conversations and record their end-of-life wishes, which were men and people from culturally diverse communities. So as part of the Dying Matters programme, we've developed an action plan. And that action plan focuses on those 5 key areas of the national programme, but we've got 3 kind of strands within that we are focusing on, and that's the public, communities in which we live, and also a focus around frontline staff and volunteers. And we're really trying to open that dialogue within local communities around death and dying, and engage with communities kind of consistently around end of life, so that we can develop those trusting relationships and enable people to put in place plans for the last years of their lives. We've also got kind of a cross-cutting theme throughout everything that we do around inequalities, and really trying to focus in on those areas of the city, and also the particular groups that I mentioned earlier, men and people from culturally diverse communities, to address some of those inequalities that exist in relation to end of life within the different groups. So this slide just highlights the broad range of organisations that are involved in the Leeds Dying Matters partnership. We've got members from the NHS, from different directorates across the council. We've got the University of Leeds involved, all the different hospices from across the city. We've got funeral directors, we've got solicitors, and a huge number of third sector organisations as well involved. And I'd say it's a really well attended partnership, really supportive partnership, and we've developed a lot over the time that the partnership has been in existence. As I mentioned, we've got an action plan that really drives the work that we're doing across the city, and that box in the middle there just highlights the 4 key work streams. We've got some slides that will just take you through some of the key pieces of work that we've got happening within each of those work streams. The 4th work stream, supporting communities dealing with grief and bereavement, was added last year in response to COVID-19 and the different experiences of grief and loss that people were experiencing as a result of COVID, and also the lockdown restrictions. So the first work stream is around communications and marketing. We've developed a lot of bespoke resources for the city, all based on the national messages. Each year the National Dying Matters programme has a different message, and we always based our kind of local campaign on that national programme, but given it, I suppose, a Leeds twist. the key messages always relate to one of those five, which around will writing, funeral wishes, planning for future care and support, talking about your wishes with loved ones, and organ donation. But we've done a lot of kind of public engagement through that. There's lots of pictures there of some of the communications and marketing activity that we've had happening over the past few years. We've had the Armley billboard. We've done a bus campaign quite early on in the programme to really try and raise awareness of the new programme when it was established. And we've also, as I say, developed some bespoke communications materials as part of the programme. We've also got a website, the Dying Matters Leeds website, which we've put a link to there in the presentation, which has also got lots more information on it. And we've also tried to collect kind of local stories from local people to bring some of that to life. And we also use the hashtag Dying Matters Leeds for any of our kind of marketing and comms work. The next work streams around stakeholder and community engagement. So pre-COVID, most of this was, we every year as part of Dying Matters Week, there's the National Dying Matters Week in May every year. So as part of our work across that week, we would tend to have a big city centre event where we would bring lots of partners together to kind of promote the activity that they're doing around death and dying and end-of-life planning. So we've had events in Leeds City Museum and Kirkgate Market. The City Museum exhibition we've also had in 2017. I don't know whether anybody went to the museum at the time, but they had a big Dying Matters community exhibition in 2017, and I think they're planning another one in a couple of years' time. We've had a remembrance exhibition at Abbey House Museum, which was a partnership project with the University of Leeds. They were doing a project called Living with Dying project. And over the years, we've had lots of death cafes. Jane is our expert on death cafes, so she'll probably be able to tell us a little bit more about them. But Leeds Bereavement Forum and Leeds Libraries have worked in partnership for the last few years to deliver a number of death cafes using libraries as venues to host those. And the picture in that slide is a cardboard coffin which people were able to write on as part of the Dying Matters event. And we also had a brass band provided by Hugh Gooding Funerals, and they have played most years for us actually, and they've marched around Millennium Square, around the market, and they always are a head turner, I'd say, and really draw people into some of the events that we've got going on over the day. And then I think it's over to Jane, who's going to talk about some of the training that we've been running as part of the capacity building work stream.
Hi there. I'm Jane. I'm just taking over as presenter, so bear with me. I now have the power to do what I like. Thank you for coming along to the talk. We're just now talking a little bit about some more work that Dying Matters has done over the years. The Community Grants project was a project we started a couple of years ago to encourage groups to run events during Dying Matters Week. So they applied for funding through the partnership, and we had over the years it's grown and grown. Last year was the most successful application round that we had, but obviously last May we just stepped into a pandemic, so sadly only a limited number of those events took place. But it's something that we really like to do because it really gets out the word and gets out the activities into the community, and it's not always necessarily in the centre of Leeds. We also, Leeds Bereavement Forum, also run some training for the Dying Matters Partnership, which is Dying Matters Leeds training, and it focuses on end of life and bereavement care. We offer that training for free to community groups or groups in Leeds that want to participate, or you can join us in it. We hold that training normally twice a year, so you can come and learn more about that. It's a really good course. In normal times, we use an actress who actually acts as someone who needs bereavement support. And although that sounds horrifically scary to do like role play and training, it's actually brilliant. It's really good. Virtually, we've not been able to do that, but we have moved our training virtually. So we are running the course still virtually now this year a couple of times. So if anyone wanted any more information about it, please get in touch and let me know. I think I can magically change the screen. I can. Supporting communities dealing with grief and bereavement. So we are a small charity and we don't provide direct bereavement support to individuals. What we do is signposting. So we have an online directory where there's between 80 and 100 different bereavement organisations that people can go to. Often, when you sort of think about bereavement organisations, very few people have heard of any of them, to be honest, because I guess you only know about them when you need them. But Cruse is the one that normally comes to mind when people think of a bereavement organisation, and we definitely do refer on to Cruse. They're brilliant in Leeds. But there are lots of other organisations that offer bereavement support as well. So if someone has a particular need, maybe they've been caring for someone and then they die, they've got a very particular bereavement need. And so Carers Leeds in Leeds will offer them bereavement support. Around children and young people, they also need very specific bereavement support, and often sudden and unexpected death, which obviously with COVID has come to the forefront, but also previously things like road traffic accidents, sudden heart attacks, suicide. All these kind of bereavements can have a very specialist bereavement support for the people that are going through that. So again, if anyone knows of anyone who wants any bereavement support or needs any bereavement support, and it doesn't matter if it's not recent, because a lot of people may have been bereaved years ago and have never gone on to seek support, and maybe now with everything happening they really feel like they could do with a bit more support maybe around it and to talk through it with someone. So there's still that happening in Leeds even with lockdown. We have a lot of stuff going, not us personally, but organisations are using Zoom, they're using the phone. When times are a bit easier, there was a brief period when people went back to face-to-face support. There are still peer bereavement groups that are going online that are via Zoom at the moment, and you can join those. So there's lots of different ways. In July, West Yorkshire and Harrogate started a grief and loss line, which is a phone and chat service that people can talk to. So that can either be a one-off chat with a trained counsellor, or they can also signpost and refer on to something in your area. So I think that COVID has really brought bereavement to the forefront for many people. Over 1 million people have been bereaved since the start of lockdown, and 500,000 of those suddenly. And the advice always is, if you're bereaved suddenly, to get support. In normal times, when someone's bereaved, about 80 to 90% of people don't need additional support because for them, their family and friends is enough. But at these times, with a lot more sudden death happening, people really are encouraged to seek support and talk about it when it's hard, if they're living on their own, or they feel like they're talking about it with their family and friends is just more upsetting for everyone. Then it's really good to get maybe an impartial chat. So I'll move on to the next slide, which looks different. That's fun. We obviously the thing about bereavement and death, dying, loss, everyone experiences it. There's no one that doesn't have that experience, whether you're very young and it's a pet that dies, and people often really don't get that if they haven't had pets. But it can be, you can be quite young when you experience your first bereavement, and how people around you cope with that and let you talk and discuss that can really affect how you go on, in the future to sort of experience bereavements. We talk about here, it can be, bereavement in itself isn't a mental health condition in terms of it's a very normal part of life, and I think a lot of people don't appreciate that they think they're going mad a little bit, or they lose their appetite, or there's lots of things around bereavement that people don't expect to happen to them because we don't talk about it very much. And when we do talk about it, people's fears of it are often very much normalised. Liz mentioned that we hold death cafes, so that's another aspect of what we do at the Bereavement Forum. So a death cafe sounds horrific. It's not. It's a safe space to talk about death, dying and loss. Normally, again, in normal times, you'd have cake and tea, and that's the encouragement you have to come along and come to a death cafe. Since lockdown, we've been doing them virtually, and they've been very successful. It's about an hour. We've got one at the end of February on our website, and again, if you want any more information about it, please come along. You have to bring your own cake, I'm afraid, and your own tea. But they're just really good places to talk about anything about death and dying. And I must have been to, I don't know, 30 death cafes now, and genuinely, not two have ever been the same. They're always very different depending on who comes along. The other aspect of work that we do at Leeds Bereavement Forum, so we have the signposting, we have our death cafes and our work with the Dying Matters Partnership, and we're also involved in, as I said, the Dying Matters training and other training and conferences in normal days and things like that. So anything about death, dying and loss, it's us. Now, I think if Andy's still awake, Andy, do you want to stick the whiteboard on for me so I can do you a lovely picture? I don't think I can. Oh, look at this. This is fun. So, people often think that death is a very linear process, and there are certain emotions that they should feel at certain points. And there was a lot of work done on this, back in the day. So if I do you a little graph, people, not a great graph, I'm not going to lie, people often think that their sort of bereavement experience should start really bad, and then over the years, it would get better and better until they're over it. They no longer have any problems with it. And that's kind of all these emotions that people might have and experience. This is the old kind of theories, anger, denial, all sorts of different emotions that people kind of think that they might experience in a very, today I'm going to be feeling anger. Next week I'll be feeling, maybe I'll be in denial next week. So there's all sorts of like linear process. And what research has really shown more recently is that grief is not like that. You will never stop grieving someone who's died, ever. You will remember them all your life. You may get used to coping with it better, but the grief, if you close your eyes and think about, sorry to, bring it down on the party, but if you close your eyes and think about the person that's died, you can be right back there to the day they die straight away. There's no downward curve here. There's no linear process. You're not going to feel on a Tuesday, you're not going to feel one thing, and then on a Wednesday you're going to feel another. It is much more like, can't do it very well on the whiteboard, it's much more like that. And all sorts of things can affect that process. So if you're going through a really difficult time in your life, maybe you're losing your job, or maybe you're losing your home, or you're going through a divorce, then all that kind of stuff can bring up lots of issues around that you may have thought you were fine with. And also, new bereavements can trigger previous bereavements. So if you experience a bereavement now, it may bring up all the emotions about another bereavement that you had 20 years ago. So it's definitely more scribble graph. There is a technical term for that, but I won't spoil you with it. Thank you, Andy. You can go back. I think I really gave Andy a heart attack having to make him do that. I apologise. So as it says here, there's no one way to grieve, and it's unlikely, I'd say impossible, to be a linear process. There are lots of communities that, well, I don't like this. They don't not engage with people don't engage with services. They're talking about men in the BAME community. It's because the services aren't right for that group. We're not offering the right type of bereavement services for those people. Not that they're engaging with us, we're not engaging with them. So when I look at this lovely lineup of people, when Liz was talking, I was just looking at all the faces. I think I spotted one man. I think I might out you. I think there might be a Mark here. There's obviously Andy who's doing the tech. I'm not sure. Can you write in chat if there's another man apart from Mark on this thing? Because that's the point, isn't it? There are 30 odd people in this room, virtual room. We're all women. And this is the kind of thing that appeals to women. It's not appealing to men. There's no men here. So I think, and also the BAME communities, I'm sorry, a lot of people are just blue blobs. I can't tell where you're from. If you're not white, again, can you put your, Wayne, hello Wayne and Paul. If you're not white, can you put your name in the chat? Because honestly, this is very much the problem we have. This sort of stuff isn't appealing to people for whatever reasons. There's a lot of research that we can do about that. Oh, I keep saying Wade and Bane. That's an excellent rhyme. But yeah, so that's Wayne, I salute you. But we're just not doing the right stuff to appeal to people, because otherwise there'd be more men here, especially, that's very obvious from the pictures, and a greater percentage of the community would be involved in this talk. So whatever we can do to kind of do different ways of doing stuff. I know obviously with lockdown it's very difficult, but there are sometimes things like we found things like maybe a walking group that's not particularly screaming bereavement. It's maybe just kind of like a walking group that people can just have a chat and talk about stuff, is more appealing to men perhaps. And historically things like the Men in Sheds projects that you may have heard of, where there's an activity going on where you can join it and you're making your bench or your garden, whatever, and whilst you're doing it you're chatting. That seems to be far more appealing to men, especially, than these kind of come and join us and have coffee and let's talk about death type activities. So there we go, I kind of answered that one a little bit. We still need to do a lot of work. As I said, the numbers of people being bereaved are enormous, yet the people coming for support have not increased as much as you might think. I think some phone lines, like the Cruise National Line, has had an increase in calls, but locally, and I work with a lot of bereavement organisations, we're not having the increase that we kind of thought we would. And I don't know whether there are parallels with kind of in the first lockdown with primary health, where a lot of people thought, oh no, I'm not well enough to go to the doctors. They're too busy, they don't want to see me. I think there's a bit of a ripple effect of that around bereavement services, that people are trying to cope, or maybe people are coping with so much they just haven't got the energy to seek extra support for their bereavements because they're doing homeschooling, or they're working from home, or they're being furloughed, or they're looking for a job, or all that kind of stuff. But the numbers haven't increased as we thought they would. So, which makes me concerned that there's going to be a massive surge of like a tsunami of all around mental health and bereavement that's going to hit us going forward. So yeah, that's just a nice slide full of links. There's lots of information about where you can get further information and support from around bereavement and dying, death and loss. As I said, the Dying Matters campaign also focuses very much on pre-bereavement, so making sure you've got your will in place, making sure you're on the organ donation. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by the comments. Yes, people are reluctant to seek support during COVID, and a lot of people don't want to do things by Zoom and phone. There's issues around if English isn't your first language. Do you really want an interpreter saying all your intimate thoughts, on a Zoom call? Or if you are deaf and you need someone to do sign language, do you really want to go through an interpreter in that way? There's lots of reasons why people aren't accessing it. Definitely. Sorry, to go back to the resources. We've also got the libraries do brilliant work with us. We've got a book list on our website. We've worked with the libraries. There's got a lot of books on there for children and young people, for old people, autobiographical stuff, but also sort of like more technical and theoretical books on grief. So we have that. And the Public Health Resource Centre also has a lot of books that are accessible around death, dying and loss. Then we've also got the Grief and Loss line, which is what I referred to at the start. So that's the new support line for people who just feel they want to have maybe a conversation with someone. And for a lot of people, that's enough. As I said, because people don't talk about death, apart from me, obviously a lot all the time, and my children really are having enough of it. But in general, people don't talk about grief and loss. So having that one conversation with the trained counsellor and the grief and loss line is often enough for people to be reassured that what they're feeling is incredibly normal. But if people do need further support, the grief and loss line will also signpost on. Dying Matters, again, haven't got the details of what Dying Matters plans to do this May yet. I think they're going to be struggling like we are to do anything. Everything needs to be done virtually, and there are so many people that are digitally excluded. That's difficult. I think they're probably struggling a bit with that. But if not, we will be doing stuff later in the year when we can meet up and do stuff. And then, NHS obviously has a lot of information, and the council has information on their site, and then there's the organ stuff there as well. So, yeah, again, if anyone needs anything in particular, please get in touch and we can definitely help signpost to you or give you the information that you need. Our website has a lot of information on. The Dying Matters website has a lot of information on, and Leeds Bereavement Forum website has a lot of information on it as well. In the news section, there's a specific COVID page which has all of the updated information about the bereavement support organisations and what they're doing now under COVID. So that's all there, as well as things like funeral arrangements and how they've changed. As I haven't said, obviously, but the way that people are dying and the way they're having funerals at the moment also has a massive impact on people's grief experience. You know, it almost feels like it hasn't happened if you weren't there. And I think, again, that's going to be something going forward that people are really going to be struggling with, I think. They're going to need support around. Aha, I think I'm back to Andy here. We have a film coming up, so I'll let Andy take over.
I met Erling in December '61. We were both 16 when we met. I'd been going to Olga Shears for about a couple of years before I met Erling. And then there was this particular night, and I saw these lovely legs. So I walked up and asked her for a dance, and she got straight up. We started dancing, and it was just as if we'd known her for years. We just knew that we were going to spend the rest of our lives together. We got secretly engaged in Easter, and she had to wear the ring round her neck. We had to keep it a secret from her parents for a long time. And my mother, she says, "You're too young. It's not going to last." So we got married in 1964, August the 1st. And we had the first child in 1965, which was a boy. And then my daughter came along 18 months later in '66. It was great. You know, everything was lovely. And we were both teenagers at that time. Sometime later, we started going to the Griffin Hotel, and we did all the fast dances, and the DJ said, "I've got a dance that you can't dance to." So I said, "All right, bring it on and we'll do his best." He announced, "Right, our two resident rock and rollers are now going to try to dance Cumberland Gap." I thought, you mentioned that. Because I knew how fast it was, you know. And so we got onto the floor. The music started, and we really gave it a go, you know, and some other people got up as well and gave it up before we did, and we were determined we were going to do the whole dance till it finished. We kept dancing all through our married lives, and then in 1985 she was poorly and it was MS. MS is not a death sentence. I mean, you know that it's going to get worse. It's one of those diseases that gets slowly worse and worse. And so we knew all this, and this just strengthened our commitment even more. And eventually, she had to stop dancing. She was in a wheelchair, but we still kept going to the Griffin to watch the other dancers dancing. And this particular night, I knew she wanted to dance. I said, "Come on, let's get on the floor to her." She said, "Oh, can I?" So I said, "I'll show you." And I got up and wheeled her onto the floor and got into where we were biggest space, and everybody moved out of the way. And I started dancing, swinging the chair around, dancing round her. I knew it was going to make her really happy to have this dance, and I was going to do the best I could so that she got that dance. And at the end of it, she was over the moon. When we was just 16 and we fell in love at first sight, we knew that it was going to last forever. And everybody was saying, "No it won't, no it won't." And in all those years, I never regretted anything.
Do we think everyone's watched the video?
Yeah, we've got lots of comments, Jane, saying yes.
Oh yeah, sorry, it's not moving. I hate Skype. Anyway, I love Skype, obviously. Thank you so much for watching that. For anyone that doesn't know, Lippy People is a charity in Leeds that has been working over the last few years to capture people's experiences of bereavement, especially men. That was one of their videos that they've shown. They have lots on YouTube. If you go to the Lippy People website, there's a link to their YouTube there, or you can just search it in YouTube. There's a lot of videos that they've produced. They're all local. They have a really lovely way of producing their videos because they work very closely, not just with the person, but they also make sure they have a really good support network around them of organisations and other people to make sure that when people are telling their stories, it's not they're very safely supported, because obviously it could be very upsetting, and the people have real control in how everything's edited at the end and sent out. So I think and also people meet each other who've done the videos, so it's a really lovely way of working together and sharing experiences. I think if I go to the last slide, oh no, one more. Any questions? And there are some in the chat. That's what I saw earlier. I don't know, Liz, have you got any preference how we do that?
No, I had spotted there were some earlier, so I don't know whether we just want to go back to those in the chat first, and then if anybody's got any other questions they want to put in the chat or come in.
Yeah, go for it. I can't help with any of your IT problems. Andy's sorry is how to do that. The first one I think was Tammy, who said about waiting support times. Cruise has relatively long waiting lists. Yeah, it's about 6 to 8 weeks, but not a year, but it's still an amount of time. You can call the cruise helpline and get support immediately, but if you want to access the trained bereavement volunteers that work at different cruise branches, you get referred to them, they have a chat with you, they do a little bit of a triage type thing with you, because again, as I said at the start, for some people, having that chat and confirming what they're feeling is very normal is enough for a lot of people. But if they feel, and you feel that you'd like to, go further and receive more counselling, then it's about a 6 to 8 week with cruise at the moment, which is not bad. I mean, that's not far off their normal levels of waiting lists, so they're doing really well. Other places, most places will have some waiting list, but not everyone. And there's a great organisation called Sudden that's based over in Halifax, and they are part of the road charity called Break, which was traditionally for people who experience sudden death through car accidents and things like that, and road traffic accidents. But they also included other forms of sudden death. And obviously with COVID, they've totally adapted to working with people who've been bereaved by COVID very suddenly as well. So Sudden are a great organisation, and they support you very quickly and immediately from the bereavement, really. So they're a fantastic organisation to support people. Cruise is brilliant. Cruise is very generic. It works with adults across Leeds. But there are, as I said, there are other bereavement organisations that can support you that might be more bespoke to your needs, and that's really what we do. Death cafes take place about every month-ish in Leeds, but we also there's a death cafe website you can look at, and they have them across the country, happening every day. And again, there are a few silver linings about everything going virtually. You can obviously join a death cafe now from anywhere in the world. So we've had people coming to ours we had someone from Saudi Arabia. I think that's the most exotic. We've also had Sweden. California was quite cool. We had someone from California. We had Belgium. We've had Doncaster. So we've had a whole range of people that wouldn't normally have been able to access our death cafes in Leeds. We've also had people access them who wouldn't have done previously because maybe they have pain conditions that mean they couldn't have left the house, or their work life wouldn't just let them just nip into Leeds for an hour to go to a death cafe. So whereas on Zoom they can do that. So in some ways there are a few little silver linings about everything going virtually. But the 24th of February is our next one. But if you go to the Death Cafe website, then you'll see all the ones that are running across the country. I can see there's some males, Martin and Wayne and Paul. I think, sorry if I've missed you out. Okay, still not enough, is it, out of all the 30, 40 people that are here today? But thank you for coming, really much appreciated. Teresa mentioned about how people are reluctant to seek support during COVID. Absolutely, they totally are. Some older people, but not just older people, are struggling to access IT to do stuff virtually. It's very much not just older people. It's a lot of people who are being digitally excluded during this lockdown, and it's something we really need to look at, and as a country really need to look at that. We do have Crossgate Neighbours have their online Zoom bereavement call at the moment, which is specifically aimed at older people, but there are some of the groups running that are aimed there. We're actually working with some of the Leeds Bereavement Forum is working with some of the neighbourhood networks to develop their own peer group support networks. So they will work in real life, and also we're trying to get those virtual beforehand. But yeah, absolutely, there's massive digital exclusion going on.
Can I add in there, Jane, as well, that we've just had a round of grants through the COVID-19 Older People's grant programme. And one of the areas that we focused on there was around men living alone and men who had recently suffered bereavement. So we've got lots of really innovative projects that kind of came forward as part of that round of grant funding that will be receiving hopefully the funding as we speak, and we'll be starting those projects imminently. So again, a lot of those are through third sector organisations, neighbourhood networks, and some of the citywide older people's organisations will be delivering those. So they'll be there to support as well.
I think is that grant that's still open as well, isn't it, Liz? So I think if people had any ideas about going forward,
no, it closed last week.
Sorry,
unfortunately, timing wise, but
it's so fine. So there'll be I mean, it's innovative stuff is what is needed in lots of ways during lockdown and not lockdown as well, because as I said, some of the traditional support just isn't being accessed, and we need to make sure that people do get support. Cully mentioned about accessing support from school. Absolutely, yeah. There have been lots of courses for teachers and support staff to access around accessing support for bereaved children and young people. However, that's a big demand and a big ask on a school. So we're very fortunate now in Leeds that we also have Child Bereavement UK have a project that supports children in school, along with the Jane Tomlinson Owls project that supports primary school age children who've been bereaved. The Marketplace works with 11 and over, and they're doing all their stuff virtually at the moment. So although schools are brilliant, I think it's a massive ask for schools, especially secondary schools, that don't tend to, know the children that's in primary school. So, but accessing support from people is completely true, and that's why it's great that some of the schemes like the neighbourhood networks, the bereavement support group, as part of what they do. So, you might have gone for the art class, or you might have gone for the walking group. The fact that there's also a bereavement group means that you trust the people that are helping you.
Can I come in again? I guess through the Dying Matters programme, we've got that real focus on developing that capacity within communities, so that you're absolutely right in terms of those trusted relationships and people wanting to go and talk to people that they know and they trust. And I suppose over the last few years of the Dying Matters partnership being established, we've had more grassroots organisations join the partnership. For example, we've got a community organisation called Carmen Centred that's based in Chapeltown, that basically was developed as a result of people noticing within that community that there was a lot of issues around grief and access to bereavement support. So they developed that in response to those kind of identified challenges, and they are now really actively engaged in the partnership, and we're really trying to spread some of that learning across other organisations working in those communities. So it's something we're really trying to harness through the partnership.
Absolutely. And the last thing I've seen, and apologies if I missed anything else, is Martin, who says that having dealt with multiple deaths and sorting the state, it was the case of focusing on things. That is so normal. So many people focus on what they have to do after someone dies, sorting out the funeral, first of all, if they haven't already got a funeral director, getting a funeral director, sorting out the funeral, and then looking at the will and sorting all that. It's very busy. My neighbour, his dad died, and I spoke to him, not long after his dad had died, quite suddenly a few years ago. And he was saying, oh no, yeah, I've done that. And it felt very much like he was ticking off boxes of what he was meant to do. And that after he'd done all that, it was almost like he was going to be feeling fine because he'd done everything. But what he was doing was massively repressing all his emotions about his father. And then a little bit later, there was an ambulance called to his house because he thought he was having a heart attack. And he was actually having a panic attack. But it was all brought on by the fact that he hadn't talked about the death of his father because he was just so busy doing stuff. And it's a really common thing to do, and just put it in a box. And for some people, that's what they do all their life, and they put their bereavement in a box and they don't look at it. But I think generally, guidance would say that isn't the healthiest way of dealing with it, and talking about it with someone is going to make that much a better outcome for you. But yeah, Martin, I get it. A lot of people do it. Excellent. So Martin's just added, if you hadn't seen that, he's a mental first aider. A good encompassing source of information about, that's a big one, I would say have a look at our reading list. There's a lot. I mean, there's obviously lots of websites that will talk about bereavement and loss and death. There's different. It depends what you like as your information. So if you like reading about other people's experiences and how they found the process of bereavement, that could be one avenue that you might go down. You might prefer to be interested in like sort of theories of grief and the sort of more research and technical side of it. In which case, have a look at a book. Our reading list includes books like that. There's lots of amazing children's books that I love that I can't read without crying, but that are brilliant. And that if you don't want to read a whole tome of bereavement stuff, have a look at some of the children's books. They are brilliant. And if you have got children or you know young people who've been bereaved, they're a really good way of accessing it. I would say there's not one way. I can't refer you to one thing. It really depends. For some people who want to talk about it, death cafes and things like that they're not bereavement cafes, but they're just ways of talking about death, dying and loss. If you want to talk about your bereavement, there are bereavement groups or the counselling, the one-to-one stuff. So that would be a good way to access it. I mean, yeah, there's grief and loss affects us all, and we just don't talk about it enough. And so I would say if you want to have a little bit more with mental first aid at the council, we work a lot with Simon Richardson, who does some of the I forgot what you call them. Is it Healthy Lives sessions that you run for the council, run for their own staff? We do a bereavement one quite regularly. We did one not long ago, and we'll be doing one in a long time going forward. So if anyone who works for the council who wants to attend those, we're doing them virtually. So if you want to attend one of those, that's another way of doing it. There's no right way. There's no one way. It's an echo chamber, isn't it? I'm just talking to myself. But yeah, that's what I would say. I think that's the last question, Liz, I think.
Can I just also add in about, you mentioned about books, and Leeds Libraries have been really actively involved in the Dying Matters partnership, and they've pulled together reading lists of all of the books that they hold in the libraries, both for children and adults.
It's on our website. We work with them, so we work with the libraries to work out which books they have enough copies of that are going to be easily accessible and available to lend out. So on the Leeds Bereavement Forum website, on the resource section, there's a book list that we worked with in partnership with the libraries. I know the Public Health Resource Centre had some of those books as well, because I was having a chat with them the other day. So the Public Health Resource Centre also has some of those, but the libraries definitely does. They may be a bit limited at the moment because not all of them will be electronic, and I don't know how much libraries are open at the moment to access physical books. But there's definitely an idea of the kind of books you might want to look at on the list. Yeah. And again, if anyone wants the list or just wants access to it, just give me a bell.
Brilliant. Has anybody got any other questions they want to ask, or any further comments?
We deathed you out.
My chat isn't working. I can't see if there hasn't been anything else. Then I guess all there is to say then is thank you very much for attending. We hope you found it interesting and useful. Thank you, Jane, for joining me today. And as I said at the beginning, it has been recorded and it will be available on the Public Health Resource Centre website. So if you wanted to either watch it again, look at some of the slides, or indeed share it with other people, then you'll be able to do so from the Public Health Resource Centre website.
My chat has just...
Thank you, everyone.
It's Liz, sorry. My chat has just refreshed. So there are a few more questions. The libraries can put books aside, absolutely. Thank you, Adele. The libraries and communities are open for order, so brilliant. So that's great. Thank you, Adele. The book list, go to Leeds Bereavement Forum website, look on the resources section, or just email me, and I can send you that. I'm sure my email is available. I'll put it in the chat. Hold on, multitasking. Type in Dying Matters or Bereavement into the search. There you go. So yeah, that's brilliant. Oh, you're too kind, all of you. Yes, I'm done, Liz. Done.
Have we covered everything? Brilliant. So. Okay, thanks everybody.